Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Oh, good. Better than yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow. I woke up and was having a day right when I woke up. I know when we met up yesterday, we were talking about things, but through that and throughout the most of the entire day, I was going through it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
that on the workshop, the Tuesday workshop for
Well,
entrepreneurs?
yeah, I think, briefly, I think what it is that when you're starting a new business and it's your first time starting a business, as an entrepreneur, I think one of the things you'll go through is a lot of fear and uncertainty. I think it's part of the roller coaster ride. And in particular, just a conflation of different things crossed my mind. So when I woke up in the morning, I woke up with uh, near cold sweats and like a stomach ache that lasted for hours. And I had to take the time and like walk my dog, get a coffee, and walk and reflect and cry and bitch and complain and find shoulders to cry on and stuff. And eventually I got over it in the afternoon. What really helped was I put myself on a project creating some content and I focused on that. And it took me like hours to do. Thankfully, I had some really great light. So
Mm.
I wouldn't want to waste it. But by the time I was done, I felt pretty accomplished. So I think the takeaway that I'd like to share is that when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, there are going to be times where you feel down for one reason or another, like you may want to quit or you felt like things aren't working for you or you're stuck. But I think if you keep down the path and talk to the right people, people who are in your support group, you can you can likely get through it. I think that being said, as an entrepreneur, you can't work in a silo. I mean, there are things that you can do as projects by yourself, but you definitely need a circle of support, a circle of trust, if you will, of people that you can turn to and confide in. And thankfully, thankfully I have a couple of those people.
Yeah. It's difficult to experience those moments alone. And I think you're right. Yeah, it really I think a lot of success of an entrepreneur does depend on the support system that that entrepreneur has around them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we, you look at entrepreneurs and you think about those who find support or have support that they have innately through their family or friends or what have you. And, people are really fortunate. But for those who are, more or less bootstrapping with resources and things like that, I'm bootstrapping with resources. Like you really need to identify where those support levers are at times when you feel like you're kind of stuck or, in the case that I was feeling, I guess I was feeling kind of hopeless at one point or another. So I think that's something that every entrepreneur is going to go through, to be honest. Have you gone through something like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember years ago when I was selling heating and air conditioning equipment, good a profitable e-commerce company in the end, but twice it was either twice or three times during that period of growth from my basement in 2002 to multiple distribution centers and a network of 30,000 contractors and highly profitable company in 2011 when I sold it. I think it was twice or three times they laid off about 80% of the staff because of errors. I know that the first one was we were making a ton of money and working our day jobs initially, and then my business partner, he went on full time. I came on full time like 6 months later. Gave myself a raise, from the job I had been at before, and then it was probably within 8 months, a year, something like that, as I recall, that I was looking ahead into the future, with my business partner. We thought, man, this growth path is just going to continue. This is amazing. We're just going to continue. So we staffed up. We spent a ton of money just bringing in staff. And not long after we brought in all this staff, boom, the sales just sort of died. And what we didn't understand was the seasonality of some of these products. We miscalculated the the growth of our own sales as though somehow this was going to continue, not accounting for the broader market, and that that forced us within a short period of time. I think 2 years, something like that, 3 years, something like that. Think I remember getting a call from the bank, our banker
Mhm.
at the time, and she was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know your account doesn't have any money in it." And we were like, "What?" And so we quickly like banded together and looked at our financials. We couldn't even read financials very well at the time. And we looked at the financials, we are like, "Oh my gosh. Oh, that's how this happened." And what we had miscalculated was, uh, due to the nature of how we obtained our revenue and paid our expenses, we were paying with this thing called float, and, uh, and suddenly we got
Mm.
upside down on that. And so I think it was the next day we brought everybody in the conference room. We're like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I know you haven't been working here all that long, but we're gonna have to lay off." And that we then took a short break. We turned off all the phones, sent everybody home, and took a short break, and then back to four of us. I think we'd had 10 or something like that, or a little more. So we had too many people. Went back to just me on the phones and my business partner on the phones. And we were just boom that afternoon, just taking phone calls, and then shut it down at 5 or 6 or whatever. We did that, and then left, came back to the next day, and had to rework ourselves back into a position of safety. And it was terrifying. It was very scary.
Yeah. Um, yeah, man. So that was me yesterday for the most part, trying to be productive, uh, trying to complete some projects I had started earlier that morning and things like that. And it was intense. So that was me. That was yesterday. I'm feeling better now. Feeling better now. But I for a minute there, I just remember I have a patio, and behind my patio there's a huge common yard area that we used to like walk our dogs. I used to play back there when I was a kid in my complex. Uh, and I sat there. I walked out the patio, sat there on the walkway, looking at my phone. I just got off the phone with someone who I deemed like my grandfather, and he was telling me all the things, and his husband was telling me all the things, and I was like, "You guys are right. You guys are right." Thank you. I get off the phone with them, and I sit down, and it's like 4 o'clock. The light is amazing because it's a clear sky and like 65 degrees. And I just sit there with my phone and like sunglasses on and like damn near weeping. And then finally I was like, okay, well, this is really great light. I should do something with this. So I was like, let's create some content. And for those who don't know, and then I sent you that video, uh, texted you a video. So that video is one of 50 that I had done
Wow.
over and over. I got really obsessed with making it perfect and making sure I had the lines down and freestyling it. And yeah, I feel pretty proud of it. I guess I'm gonna post it a little bit later in my social media, amongst other things. But that's what I wanted to bring today. What do you have in mind for topic?
Well, I think it's a great topic. It dovetails with the things that have been in the air in my circles, which is the idea of mentorship and how important it is to be able to have somebody like you talked about, your grandfather, let's say, to be able to tell you from further down the road that you're on, hey, it's going to be okay. I know the detour there seems awful, but I promise it opens back up. It's a delay. You'll be fine. You're going to get where you're going. Here, let me talk about my journey and how it worked out. I think it's really important that we have a mentor out there in front of us that we can make those phone calls to alleviate our anxieties in the moment, because it's really just this wave that every entrepreneur goes through. It's not just exclusive to entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs deal with this in a way that is
Squared.
a little
They deal with
more.
it squared.
Yeah, I mean,
They
entrepreneurs,
deal with it squared.
yeah, they deal with it in a unique. There's a certain aspect of this that is unique to entrepreneurs because it's like your livelihood. If you have your health and you have your relationships and you have your job, the stability, the perceived stability of going to work for somebody sort of anchors that those one of those uh one of those parts of the stool, right? So you've got three legs to your stool. That's a pretty solid leg, right? But you start moving one, it's like, whoa, wait a second. Now you have to balance on the other two until you get that stability back. And entrepreneurs sense this instability with that one leg until they've been doing it for a while. And then you're like, okay, that it feels wobbly. We can just tighten it. You know, that's it is a
Put a little
challenge, I think, for
matchbook.
entrepreneurs.
Put a little matchbook under it. It's
Right.
wobbly. Put a little
Yeah,
matchbook
seriously.
under it.
Seriously, because
Yeah.
entrepreneurs take responsibility for their own destiny. Whereas if you go to work for somebody, you are putting your faith and trust in somebody else, whether they're making good decisions or not. I mean, the employees that we hired, way back when, put their put their trust and faith that we knew the marketplace. And so, when they got let go a year, something like that into their tenure, uh, I'm sure it came as a shock to them. They have this idea of perceived stability, and we're just making it up as entrepreneurs, thinking that thinking we're reading all the tea leaves correctly, thinking we understand our financials, which we didn't. It- That that ripple effect from our actions, rippled through all these other people's lives, but we had to take responsibility, and so it's extra terrifying when it's like, oh, now I have to figure this out tomorrow. And to some extent, an entrepreneur a person who goes to get a job, if they get laid off, they go to the next company and they're like, "Hey, I got laid off." And it's like, "Oh, yeah, it's no fault of your own. Come work for us." If you're the failed entrepreneur who's like, I blew the whole thing up, and you go to the next job and they're like, why are you looking for a job? You're like, it failed. You know, it's a different story. It's a different level of responsibility and accountability that isn't for everybody. It's extra terrifying in ways that other people don't deal with or don't see. They deal with it, but they don't see it. There is no stability. You're putting your faith in trust either in your own decisions or in somebody else's decisions. And an entrepreneur really has to be able to be comfortable with those moments of I'm going to take responsibility for this. And like you, this is the second thought that comes to mind. Like you feel this anxiety, and there's a great saying that says the antidote to anxiety is action. Anxiety, your body. I've heard this to be true, and somebody can correct me if it's not, but I've heard this is true. That the feeling of anxiety in your body, apart from the story that your brain writes, the feeling of anxiety in your body is the same feeling as excitement. So your body is physically excited. Your brain writes the story, I'm excited or I'm scared.
Hmm. Okay.
The physical manifestation of those is the same, which means that rewriting the story, and I love what you did. You shot 50 videos. What you did is you took that anxiety and you used that anxiety as energy, because it's simply excitement. It's excitable energy, and it needs to be directed someplace. And so if you don't direct it someplace into action, it tends to become bigger because it's developing, right? Uh, Whereas if you funnel it into action, the anxiety is diminished because it goes someplace. The energy goes someplace, and it goes in your choice, and hopefully others. It goes into creation.
Hmm.
So you create the solution. You feel the anxiety, you funnel it into action, and you create the solution, which relieves the anxiety and propels you forward.
That
That's
makes
the
a ton of
loop that
sense.
entrepreneurs need to get in the habit of enjoying. It's like you gotta get in love with that process because most people, including entrepreneurs, are just eventually give up. They feel that anxiety, that excitement, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to feel this anymore," and they stop doing something rather than funnel the energy into the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's pretty much what happened. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I with regards to mentorship, and I think that's really important. Like, I've worked on other projects before. I've worked on other ideas, for some of which I want to bring back into the fold. With regards to an entrepreneurial journey, I think for me now, what's different is that I have a support system around me with regards to exactly this, what I'm doing. I think the plugging our little community here, that I feel like Think Our Growth community, has really empowered me to be able to move through certain aspects in which anxiety or, failure, or the fear of failure has had me stop in other projects. So I think, if- I think my message to other would be entrepreneurs out there would be like, if you are looking to, if you have a great idea and you want to share it with others in the form of a business, definitely get some people on your side, whether or not they know what they're doing, or if they're there for emotional support. It's really important that you get some people on your side. And yeah, I feel pretty blessed. I went through it yesterday. I made some phone calls, did some things to your point. Uh, took action, and I feel better. You know, I feel better. I feel like I did something with it, and yeah, I think that's how we're starting the conversation today.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this mentorship idea, the concept that we're throwing around here, is from outside the entrepreneur. It's from the mentor's perspective. So often, think of it this way: if you've got a good friend, they're working on some project, uh, building a shed out back. They're got this little property. They're building a shed out back, and man, they are just struggling with it. And they keep saying like, "Yeah, I'm building this shed." 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks goes by, and then you go over there and you're like, "Oh man, that the corners and the edges on there aren't quite right." And they're like, "Yeah, but I made do." And you're like, "Well, how'd you cut that?" "Oh, I got a handsaw and I got a little thing." And it's like, "Yeah, I have all the tools, right? You could have just asked." "Oh, I didn't want to bother you. I could do it myself." Yeah, but if you just would have asked, you would have been done quite a bit faster, and that would have been squared up. I think sometimes we sacrifice our own development because we're unwilling to ask somebody, and we sacrifice the desire of our friends who want to give to us. They want to help us, and we don't allow them to help us, which takes away, I think, the joy of being on the other side of this journey. It's like, "Hey, I bought these tools. I bought them for a project I was working on, but I'm here to loan them out too. I like,
I,
why wouldn't I help my friend?" And
I agree
I
with you
think we
on that.
sacrifice that relationship and joy of helping others because we don't. An entrepreneur doesn't ask and really say, "Here's what's going on."
Okay, I agree with you on that completely. I feel like there are many entrepreneurs out there who feel like they can't ask, they won't ask, and what have you. But there is something to be said about your circle at the time, right? So more often than not, and at least in my situation, um, I don't have a lot of other entrepreneurs in my circle, other people who have treaded this path before, and um, I know well, I've heard that like this is um, a common thing where you have an entrepreneur and then they're doing things, and then the people around them, whether it's their family or maybe even their so-called friends or what have you, will not necessarily be positive influences, but negative ones. Like, oh, you should just get a job. You're wasting time and blah, blah, blah. In my case, that was somewhat true only because, not to say that people were being negative, people just didn't know what people weren't bringing any value to my journey. So
Mm.
sometimes you have to turn to strangers. For example, in our conversation, when we first met, we met through a project that I was working on, a job that I was working on. And it wasn't until we reconnected, maybe 2 years later, and I told you about my ideas and things that things I wanted to do, is when we started to build a rapport, I, and then at least from my point of view, have eventually become friends, right?
Mhm.
So I think there are going to be many different entrepreneurs, some of which have the support system again built in, like maybe their dad was an entrepreneur, maybe they have friends or uncles or family that were entrepreneurs, people that can show them the way. But there are other people out there, specifically ones in certain demographics, that may not have that support system there for them one way or another. So it's really important to identify or seek out who those people can be in your life. And, um, you know, to that point, y- that can be very difficult. That could be the one thing that's holding someone back, even that they didn't have a support, but they need to find a support circle for themselves. So it makes sense when you look out in social media and you see all these other influencers or other entrepreneurs out there, kind of selling their skill set or their game or their how tos or whatever, their guidebooks or what have you. And people eat that up because I think one way or another, they're looking for that sort of playbook, or they're looking for that sort of support. Um, if you are a fortunate one out there to find it organically one way or another, I would say hold on to that for as much as it's valuable to you, as long as it's useful to you, and take that experience, and I would say pay it forward.
Mm.
To be honest, I feel like that's why I really enjoyed participating with Thinker Growth community as well as engaging with the team, is because in one way or another, the experiences that I experienced, I I can share, or you know, things I learned I could share. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is important to give back. So I think there's three different types of people that you need as an entrepreneur. Somebody to follow, a mentor, somebody to walk with, a peer, and somebody to give back, somebody who's following you. And I think it is that trifecta.
That was the word
We need a fun name for it, right?
so
The
I was going to say that.
trifecta of mentorship. I don't know. The
One to
thinker
look to, someone to be
trifecta.
the thinker, the
I don't know.
thinker trifecta.
But I think that
I like that.
completes it is all sides of the entrepreneurial journey, because it's you, your perspective. It's the perspective of somebody who's been there, done that. The perspective of people who are walking that journey with you. And then that there's a saying that you don't really know something until you can teach it. And it's that process of clarification of all the thoughts, all the ideas, the journey, the wisdom, the experience, clarified into something that's actionable for somebody else. That's a clarification or a filtering process, however you want to look at it, when I mentor someone else. And
Mhm.
so I think that everybody gets better by mentoring somebody else.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I've mentored kids before.
Mm.
Yeah, nice. So let's switch gears a little bit. I wanted to talk about um, this video that I watched yesterday. I shot it over to you. and it was talking about how to use social media to make 100K in 90 days. But look, what I took from it was the building of a sales funnel and what that looks like. And because I've been to the point I made earlier about making all this content or making 50 videos to complete one video,
Yeah.
um, was because I think it's time for me to start like making more of an impact on social media to bring more people to my products and stuff like that. And what I was finally starting to put together was how that process should work, right? So the top of the funnel would be people who are either discovering you or maybe, they know who you are, but they really don't know what you're doing. So they want to learn more. You're building brand awareness, right? What people introducing people to your product. So that's top. Those people are at the top of this funnel. And then I found out that the middle of the funnel is people who are learning about you and they want to learn more. They want to be they they want to know more about what you're doing. So it's more about like solving their problems, addressing what's on their mind with regards to any
Mhm.
sort of objections in the product that you're trying to sell. And then the end of the funnel or the deep part of the funnel is the part where people are like, I just need an opportunity to give you money. Can you give me that opportunity? And then, so those are the three different parts of the funnel. And so when I thought about it that way, I realized, okay, so I need to make more content about like introducing my products, introducing the brand, introducing thoughts behind the brand, why we're here and what we're doing. And then from there, create something in which I can take those leads that I'm getting, whether they're coming in through via email and stuff like that, and then or getting their email addresses and so forth, and then turning that engagement into more engagement with regards to like sending out email chains or not email chains, but like email offers, things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, Kind of answering those questions and getting more people engaged with what we're doing. And then with that D part of the funnel, literally just call to action. Literally sign up for this, buy this, and yada yada. So I think that part is actually quite interesting to me. So I'm taking time out of my day to kind of like develop that for this business,
Yeah.
as well as economic stuff that we've been working on. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. So considering that you sold air conditioning equipment,
Yeah.
would you? It's same thing. It's products. Would you? What are your thoughts about like sales funnels and things like that?
I, in my mind, go back to the map, the, the business map, that at the top, there's awareness.
Mhm.
You, someone needs the product, service, or message that you are peddling, and they run into your content someplace that makes them aware that you have that product, service, or message that that person already needs, or your your message makes people aware that they need it, which is like infomercials, right? You didn't know you needed
Mhm.
copper pans until you watch the infomercial. And then 30 minutes later, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to need a whole set. Uh, so that's awareness. The second level is a sales process, and that sales process can look different for every company. So if you are selling packs of gum, that sales process and awareness looks like an end cap or point of purchase display right next to the checkout right next to the checkout. And you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot I needed gum. And you grab gum and it's 10 seconds. The on the other side of it could be you're buying a multi-million dollar machine and you're spending a year evaluating vendors and traveling across the world. And then you put a down payment on that machine, you get delivery of it a year later. That sales process can be long, intense, full of negotiation. Then you go to fulfillment, where you fulfill on the promises that you made up in awareness and through your sales process. So I think when we look at awareness, then you break it down into all the ways that a person might run into you.
Mhm.
And I look at that process as links in a chain. When somebody enters, let's say, uh, via social media, they run into your social media. That's one link in the chain. What's the next link in the chain that moves them forward into your sales process? And then how do you move from your sales process into your fulfillment? And that again, that's different for every product, service, or message. But they are links in the chain, and you only need to accomplish in that one link something to get them to the next link in the chain.
Yep.
That's that's how I break it down in my mind. And then you can just go as granular as you need to in each of those areas to maximize your return on investment, or to return on energy. If you're an entrepreneur and you're just like spinning around, it's like your return on time. If you're going to make content, okay, well, you have a limited amount of time to make content. So where am I going to just up in awareness? Where are the areas I can distribute, given the amount of time and resources that I have, to maximize the eyeballs for that one link in the chain? Then in that message, what do I say that gets them to the next link in the chain? And that's where, Gary Vee talks about, you just put a bunch of content out there, just blast it out there. And I think that's really true, because all these messages are very transient in nature now. You're swiping and making a decision in less than a second sometimes, whether you're going to continue to watch that video. If you show up 100 times, you're going to get more leads than when you show up one. That's just math.
Mm.
Even if um even if you have a product that ultimately they aren't going to buy, you're going to become noticed, and they will eventually go to the next step and go, "Who is this guy who keeps on showing up in my feed?" So they'll drop into this sales process simply by virtue of quantity of times that you show up.
Yeah, I agree. And I often remember, surfing on like Instagram or something like that, and then finding an account that might be interesting one way or another. To your point, making a decision in like a split second. And what really is helpful is when that account uh, has a wealth of content in it. When you
Mm,
when you decide to look closer and click on the link or what have you, I think that's really important. More often than not, I'll get sucked into an account and I'll like look at 10 of their posts of anything. And if you don't have that content in there, then you, you will lose their attention. I think I didn't realize how easy it was to post online because, well, at least a couple years ago when I tried doing something similar to that, I found it difficult to post to different platforms like Instagram and Facebook. Now that's changed. Like you can easily post something on, I mean, there are apps out there that'll post your post on all your different social media if you wanted
yep.
to, but there are also ways that you can do it yourself. And so that's super helpful. Um, but yeah, I think, I think that's, I think that's cool. But I think what's also really cool is what do we have? We have our pitch day coming up on Thursday. Today is Tuesday.
Yep.
What do we have to look forward to on the pitch day?
On pitch day, we've got a handful of entrepreneurs who are going to present their businesses over the course of several minutes. So people will be able to hear from an entrepreneur their business that they're working on. And then importantly, at the next step is how you can help that entrepreneur, how they need your assistance. It could be that they're looking for investment. It could be they're looking for contacts. Um, you know, you talk about needing some support when you're going through these moments as an entrepreneur. A great way to get support is simply to reach out to other entrepreneurs. So I think one of the benefits of attending something like a pitch day is to network with other people who are in the trenches with you, so that you can get the support that you need when you need it, and give the support that you want to give when somebody else needs it. and a year from now, you're going to be better for it. So attending a pitch day not only informs you about what somebody else is doing, but it also puts you in the same room of people who are standing on their deck, terrified at times, just like you are, or have been in the past, and they're going to be like, "Hey, it's fine. You're going to be okay." So that's what people can look forward to on a pitch day, and we're going to be doing this a couple times a month, uh, as we've talked about it. I've done it a couple times. I've done it weekly before, and then I've gone to events where we've listened to 100 pitches in a day, which was way too much, very exhausting. And I was
Yeah, I
ready
can
for the
imagine.
party that night for sure. But uh, I think I think gathering, like we talked about, entrepreneurs into this community and then giving an outlet to get awareness about what these people are doing, an opportunity to connect and network. Doing that a couple times a month, I think is going to be very beneficial for folks. I've seen it done in the past to great effect, and I think it's somewhere there's 150 or more of those videos that are hanging around. But live pitch days multiple times a month, and that yeah, like you talked
What
about
was an
social system.
what was a notable pitch that you remember in the hundreds of pitches that you listened to? Like interesting products, interesting entrepreneurs. I've been listening to like pitch podcasts lately, and I think they're super inspirational, if
Mhm.
anything, if not really funny. You get some really cool stories there. But what were were there any stories that or pitches that stood out to you over the years?
Yeah, there is one that really stands out to me because of the full circle that was unexpected as a younger entrepreneur for me. Uh, it was a guy who talked about having this battery technology, this unique, amazing battery technology. I think it was based in water, and he had a lot of science behind it. He's like, "This totally works," and it seemed revolutionary. It's one of those things like, "Why does this not exist in the marketplace? It's amazing. It can't be the first time this come up with this." And so we saw his pitch. The next day, went to his booth, and I'm just hanging around and listening to his spiel that he's giving to all these people. And there's this guy standing me, this older gentleman standing next to me. And I was like, "What do you think? What do you think of this technology? You think it'll work?" He's like, "Well, I got a story for you." He said, 20 years ago, back in the 80s or whatever, there was a guy who launched the battery technology, revolutionary, very similar to this. And that battery technology, before it went to market, was bought by one of the large battery manufacturers, one of the large lead acid battery manufacturers, and promptly scuttled.
Yeah,
Patent was bought and never saw the light of day. He said, "So yeah, I'm going to invest in this thing because there's somebody, whether it goes to market, it'll be successful, or whether there's somebody who's going to buy it so it doesn't go to market, it's gonna be
that guy's still gonna
successful.
make some money.
It's gonna be successful transaction." And it never crossed my mind up to that point to invest in an organization, like, because so many entrepreneurs are like, "I wanna make this a success." Not necessarily. Sometimes the success will come in a way that you don't expect because somebody doesn't want your idea to go to market, but you will benefit financially. And it was that full cycle of that pitch that I completely didn't expect that because, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I want to make these things successful. Yeah. You Success might look like a big fat check as nobody ever knows this thing existed.
I mean, I thought you were going to talk about the guy who made the water powered car and then got poisoned. When you mentioned it, like, oh, batteries, and I was like, oh, he's going to talk about the water car guy. But yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Like, I think we talked about in our conversations about like scarcity and diamonds. Like, the diamond industry holds diamonds to make to control the price. So it makes sense. But yeah, like that's crazy. When you have an idea like that, that's so good. Like people don't want it to go to market. That's intense. That's
Yeah.
intense
You're
stuff.
disrupting an entire supply chain, which somebody with a lot of money does not want you to do because that supply chain is turning cash right now. The last thing you want to do is disrupt it. You don't know what comes next as soon as you disrupt it. So there are big players who will want things to stay the same. Entrepreneurs want to disrupt, but there are headwinds, which, wrapping it back into the previous part of our conversation, if I had not been aligned with this guy who'd done all this investment with companies before, if I'd not been aligned with him in, let's say, a mentoring capacity, or at least a conversational capacity and networking capacity, I would have never known that that was a possible exit for this investment. So I'm only operating in my own paradigm. But
Mhm.
when I align myself with other people who've been there, done that, the options available to me open up pretty tremendously. And honestly, from an investment standpoint, it's a whole lot less effort to get something bought and have it go away than to slave over it for years and hope it is going to disrupt the marketplace.
That is true. That is true. I I've listened to a number of pitches lately, and I actually heard a pitch about batteries in this show I've been listening to, and the guy that he walked out of there. It was like a pitch show, kind of like the Shark, but like more grounded, I guess.
Okay.
Not as glamorous. Anyways, he walked out of there with like 150 grand, and that I that pitch, that type of technology, I think that is disruptive when you talk about energy storage and batteries and things like that.
Mhm.
Uh, w- I've heard a number of pitches. I can't remember. One is where this lady was, man, I didn't, I'll think about it later. But I think, I think pitching in general is um, super beneficial, very constructive because every, as an entrepreneur, the one thing that entrepreneurs need to do all the time is sell. You have to sell your idea for time, your idea for support, your idea for resources and money. Uh, you have to sell yourself on your idea, like,
Yes. Yeah.
like every day. When people tell you you have to make that decision to move forward, my caveat to that is like you have to make that decision all the time. People say you just have to make that one decision to move forward. I'm just like, nah, well, yeah, you have to make that decision all the time.
Yeah.
You have to constantly decide that you're going to move forward. Uh, when you fail or fall on your face, you have to move, you have to decide that you're going to get up and keep going. Um, but I think pitch days are really, really fun because you get to learn about people, like their products and what the thought process was. I think there's a product out there that you introduced me to recently called private grooming or something. Yeah, private grooming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Go nuts.
product, when you show go nuts, when you showed it to me, I was I was like, wow, that looks like a Death Star. Or it looks like one of those targets that Jedi's
Oh,
um
right.
practice with when they're doing the
Yeah.
Jedi train, like a
Mhm.
floating ball. Yep. I thought it looked like one of those. I'm like, cool. And then, just looked at the content. I was like, how did you come up with stuff like that? Like, how did this guy decide to come up with a groomer
Yeah.
for that certain part of your body? Like, what was he doing in the shower that made it so uncomfortable for him that he decided to invest his time, his money, and more importantly, his time and his skill set, and essentially create things out of nothing to solve this problem of, grooming. And I was just like, that's pretty amazing. And so you often run into different businesses and people with different really cool ideas. In school, you have those days where you have invention day where you like create inventions or stuff like that, stuff that can change the world.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and so when you get into pitch days like that, you learn, you talk about, you get in the mind of these people and what they're trying to solve. And sometimes they're like really disruptive and world changing, like batteries. Sometimes they're, they feel fairly novel, or to your point, they feel like something that you didn't know you needed until
Yeah.
you actually see it. And you're like, dang, I need a groomer like that too. That looks like it'd be super fun to try out.
Well, one of the benefits of doing a pitch day is refining your message. Figure out what works in terms of your messaging and what doesn't work. What's resonating with your audience, what's not resonating. Ways to cut out the things that don't matter. You only develop that through experience. It's like public speaking. Nobody's a good public speaker right out of the gate. It's the 100th time, the 1,000th time you're on stage. It's like, this is flowing so easily. It's like breathing to me. The first time's the worst time. So you got to get past that. You got to get through it. And that means you have to do it. To get through it, you got to do it. So a pitch day puts you front and center, pitching your product, service, or message, figuring out what resonates, getting feedback on that to refine it the second time.
And the cool thing is too, you're around people who've at least done it, or yeah, who have at least done it.
Yeah.
People out there who have their own products, who know that struggle, that can support you and know what that feels like. To the point I made earlier before, sometimes you're around people that have no idea what starting a business is like. And so that feedback is probably not going to be the best feedback, but the feedback that you'll get from other entrepreneurs who are looking at the product from the point of view of someone who's starting a business is
Yeah.
super beneficial, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that's very true. It's certainly been true in my experience. And I've seen people grow pretty remarkably in their presentation abilities from the first pitch to, the 10th time to the 20th time that they're presenting their product, service, or message. Uh, and it's really important because you can have a great product, revolutionary, amazing product, service, or message, but if you communicate it poorly, nobody's going to buy it. You can likewise have an average product, service, or message and communicate it well, and people will buy that. So a lot of the perception of whether a person needs to move forward in that sales process, back to the idea of sales process, depends on that first messaging. Are you saying something that's important to your audience is the primary question I think that needs to be answered.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to your point about like getting that feedback, like you're not going to know how much money uh, a product's going to make until you put it out there. And having it in your mind thinking, oh, this is going to be great, or it's not going to do any entrepreneur any justice. Only way that you'll find out whether or not your product can make money or even make sense
Mm,
is to present it to other people and get their feedback. So, I firmly believe if you have a product out there that you feel like can change the world or can disrupt an industry, or at the very least make you some money, it's probably worth it to like bring up that idea to somebody that can give you the feedback that'll help you kind of make a more educated decision. I know that for me, coming up with my brand, Guardian Skincare, was one that took that kind of came about just in conversation with friends and my experience. And my experience with skin in general is not very unique, but I think for someone my age, it's becoming more and more important for guys like me. So in conversation with friends and things like that, we were talking about like different products we use and how we look, or how young we look, you know, as a result of. And I was like, oh man, there are likely a lot of guys that don't know this. And it's interesting. It was interesting to me of the different people who've come to me and asked me how I, you know, have maintained my skin the way I do. So I was like, well, this sounds like it can be fun. Let's try it out. And so here we are after months of waking up with cold sweats. No, just kidding.
it's totally true though. And that's it's kind of funny to laugh at it once you go through it. It's terrifying. It's terrifying at the outset. I get it. I've never been I've rarely been more afraid than when I was running business stuff and feeling threats from all sides. Uh, and but now that I've gone through a lot of stuff, it's like, all right, well, it doesn't kill you, and you learn a lot through it. And wow, the ability to pass on those lessons is really remarkable. I think for people, it really impacts their lives in ways that they would never know because they just haven't been there before. And then when they go through it, and they're like, oh, it didn't kill me. Here's what I learned. Then they pass it on. We have to stay connected from one individual to the next in this chain to be able to, I think, to be able to provide some stability for people. And because at the end of the day, like whether that's fine. You're building a company, you're trying to sell products or services, but we're just people. We're just terrified little people, and all of our all of our fears and hopes are so similar from one person to the next. It's this facade of the company and the way we're going to market and all sorts. It's the facade of all of that type of stuff. What we sometimes get wrapped up in, forgetting that at the end of the day, we're just a person. Our
Mhm.
customer is just a person, and fundamentally, we're all very, very similar. And we got to get down to those fundamentals, which I think makes us better communicators and helps us weather storms and helps us reach out for help and helps us help other people go courageously into this adventure of entrepreneurship.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's crazy, like crazy things. I think aren't looking for, if you're looking for stability and you're looking for, um, if you're looking for that day to day, I'm just going to grind and make money and live my life uh, and be more conventional with how you are, um, making your livelihood. I think that's
Mm.
great. I don't think being it's hard for me to say that I would recommend being an entrepreneur to everybody. Like, not. It's definitely not for everybody. It's some you need some fortitude for that. And it makes sense too, because when you're out there as a would-be entrepreneur thinking about these great ideas that you may have in your mind and you're like, "Oh, I could do this or I could do that." There are gonna be people out there or influences out there that may make you think twice. I think that happens to everybody.
Absolutely.
So it's up to the person with the great idea to decide to want to move forward. And like I said before, you have to keep on making that decision pretty much all the time. Uh, yeah, it's hard for me to say that I recommend becoming an entrepreneur for everybody. I don't think this lifestyle is for everybody. But I think but I definitely believe that if you have a really great idea and you work on it, you persevere uh, and, and either create or become a part of a, a community or some sort of symbiotic relationship with different acquaintances, or not symbiotic, but like something like that.
Yeah.
And I think can work out. I'm definitely not. It's weird through all the bullshit that goes through my mind about this and all the different fears and stuff like that. It's like it's not something that I would take back, and it's not something that it's not something where I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna go back to what I was doing before. Like I feel like I feel like I would rather not work for one entity. I'd rather work for myself servicing a bunch of people.
Okay.
If that makes
So, so in our final minutes here, we've talked a lot about entrepreneurship. Uh, what, uh, I guess the question is, how do you know that entrepreneurship is right for you?
good question. I think for me specifically, it's something that I've always wanted to do, just with different ideas I've had in my head and different situations where I've tried to pursue it. I think what really makes me feel really good about this journey is just the people that I have around me and the product
Mm.
and the brand and product that I'm creating. So starting with with what I'm creating, this is something that I have pretty uh, pretty strong knowledge in. Something that I find to come easy for me, like with regards of my interest towards towards what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm helping other people, and I know I am because I've helped other people with this type of product and or service before. Uh, but I think what's really made me feel like that I'm heading in the right direction is just the people around me, just you know, helping me and supporting me as I move forward. Even what's crazy is even my mom uh, is supporting me one way or another, and she's not somebody who started a business or she works for the city, so in my opinion, she's an example of of somebody of a worker, of somebody in the workforce.
Yeah.
Uh, so with everything that I'm going through with her support, of course, she's my mom and I feel like she should, but with her support kind of makes me feel a little bit better about what I'm doing. So I think to answer your question, I don't know if what I'm doing is the best thing or the right thing to be doing, but I just know that I'm passionate about it and I have a lot of good people around me. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, we're at the end of our hour for the workshop.
And that
This has
was
been,
fast.
yeah, I know, right? Well, it's been such a rich conversation, timely, not only for you, but for me, as I think these workshop calls tend to be, but also so rich for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, people who are thinking about bringing their product, service, or message to market, the things that they need to be aware of. And I think that one of those big hurdles that we talked about today is uh, be circle around yourself the trifecta of mentorship, somebody to follow, somebody to walk with, somebody to lead, and then all of these questions like, is my anxiety overwhelming? How do I get through this? Or should I invest in this? Should I not invest in this? What are other ways to solve this problem that I've not yet thought of? All of those answers come faster and better when we surround ourselves with people who are interested in our success and in some ways have been there, done that. And then we become better when we also clarify our own thoughts and teach somebody else. I think that's important. Any other thoughts you on your mind as we end this call?
No, I'm looking forward to the pitch day on Thursday. That's going to be Thursday the 5th. That's
Thursday
also
the
my
5th.
brother's birthday.
Nice.
Thursday the 5th. What time is it again? At what time?
I
At
think I've got it down as noon central, which makes it 1 Eastern, I think.
okay, the Thinker Growth pitch day at noon central on Thursday the 5th. We have a few great speakers and entrepreneurs and I'm really looking forward to meeting all of the different other entrepreneurs that are going to be a part of it. I hope that people who see this would join us and be a part of either this one or the ones upcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ryan, great to see you. We missed our other faculty members today on these workshop calls. We've got various faculty members which join us from time to time, and we discuss topics that are important, I think, for entrepreneurs to make this journey uh, more fulfilling and easier if we can. So head to thinkergrowth.com, join for free, and participate in the workshop calls on Tuesdays. All right. See ya.
Cheers.